presentation, right? I'll just do Thomas's again.
Reinforce it.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming out here tonight. This is pretty cool. This is only like my second or third time ever being in Orlando. I really like it so far, although I've only been here for like 2 hours, but pretty cool place. So my name is John Oberg, and I want to say thank you to Larry, Larry, for organizing this event and doing such great work in Florida. He's a real trailblazer when it comes to protecting animals in the area, and I'm really thankful to know him. And so, make sure you're connected with him if you aren't already. So, you guys make this magic happen. Activists are making such big waves across the country for animals. Thomas made that abundantly clear with his presentation that as a result of the work that you all are doing on college campuses, on street corners, on online and social media, you guys are making magic happen for farm animals like we've never seen before. So I want to mention to feel free to take notes, especially the second half of my presentation, which is very heavy when it comes to kind of details about making your social media presence really effective. And so I'll throw a lot of information at you. So if you want to take notes either on your phone, take some photos or videos, or just write down pen and paper, that's totally fine. And it looks like Larry has some paper if anybody wants. Oh, he's got one piece of paper, never mind.
I've got some extra paper.
Cool. Cool. All right, guys. Cool. So first of all, who are we and what are we doing here? My name is John Oberg, and Thomas Goodman is my good friend of last 5 years. We both branched out on our own about a year ago to advocate for animals in the ways that we found to be best, most effective, particularly using our skills and expertise. So I used to run the social media for a group called Vegan Outreach, and then a group called the Humane League, and then a little over a year ago I launched my own project, my own independent project, funded through Patreon, and it's going really well. And so we decided to go on a little 2-week tour through the Southeast because it's January or it's February and it's winter. So we decided to come down here and speak to you all about how to make a difference for animals. So I want to talk about how I got my start. So the way I got my start is I was my mom and I was very close to my mom. She and I grew up. I grew up as a only child to a single mother. She passed away about 4 years ago, but she was very, very special to me. And she and I grew up in suburban Detroit, and we were pretty poor. So what we would do is in the mornings before school, we would go from can to can, collecting aluminum cans out of the trash cans. And the reason we did this is because in Michigan, at least at the time, is the only state where you get 10 cents for a can. So for an hour or two of our time, we could probably get $20 or $30 worth of cans. So that's something we would do every morning together. And when we go into this park, called Stony Creek, is right outside of Detroit, near our home. We would go every morning, and we would collect the cans, and there was nobody else in the park. It was probably 5, 6 in the morning. And the only other beings that we could see in the park on a regular basis were deer. And we kind of became friends with the deer. We named them. We really looked forward to seeing them every morning, and it really made this whole going through trash cans thing a lot more fun. And so one day we got word that there was going to be a cult. So they were going to hunt these deer who were previously protected, and they knew nothing about fear. They knew nothing about slaughter. They knew nothing about the horrors that were going to come their way. Literally family members, members of their family were going to be picked off, and it broke our hearts. And as like a 10-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid in '99, I probably wouldn't have done anything. I was sad, but I didn't know what to do. So my mom, she did not rest on her laurels. She said, "Johnny, we've got to go do something." So what do? We went to the entrances and to the exits of this park, day in and day out, with signs. She made these awesome signs, "Stop the hunt," "Being cruel isn't cool," and we shared this experience together. And unfortunately, despite getting media coverage, our cries fell on deaf ears, and many of these animals were hunted and killed, and it really, really killed us. Really, really broke our hearts. But what this did teach me was that when there's an injustice going on in the world, you don't just stand there and take it. You don't just turn a blind eye. You actually do something about it. And there is one thing that really stood out about the story that really warms my heart to this day, and I'm so happy I got to experience this with my mom, is that one of the nights when they were planning on doing this hunt, we stayed a little bit after dark, a little bit after hours, after the park was closed. And my mom said, "Johnny, we've got to warn these deer that danger is on its way." And so we howled. And so we howled and howled and howled through the night and scared off the deer. And we learned the next morning that hardly any deer were killed. So can we give a round of applause for my mom? So that wouldn't have happened without her courage. And so I wouldn't be an animal advocate today had I not had that experience. And then I want to talk about my cat, Scoop. So my cat, Scoop, is a Maine Coon cat. I adopted him when he was a kitten when I was about, I think, 8 years old. And I was an only child, and I loved this cat so much. He was like a brother to me. I would go to the grocery, or to Meijer, that's just like a grocery store there, like Walmart, and I would get these like pipe cleaners and make toys for him. The guy at the pipe cleaner section of the store was always like, "Why do you want pipe cleaners? You're 8 years old." But I would do it, and I loved it, and he was really, really special. Anyway, I traveled around. I was traveling around Europe, and I was backpacking Europe, and I got a call from my mom while I was in Berlin, and it was so special to me. I remember exactly where I was. I was couch surfing, sitting on a couch, and I got this call, and I was heartbroken because my mom told me that Scoop had cancer, and it really tore me apart. So I said, "Mom, we got to do something about it. We got to give him surgery." So the cancer was in his toe, and so we took him to the vet, and they removed his toe. And we were worried about the repercussions of this and the problems that could come out as a result of putting him under surgery, especially because he was a bit older. But we did it, and we had our fingers crossed. But unfortunately, a few weeks or months later, the cancer came back and into his other toe. And we said, "You know what? Scoop is such a special family member to us. We got to do what we can to help him." So we took him in, and we got his toe removed. And so he had, I guess, 2 or 3 toes left. I'm not sure how many toes exactly a cat has. Yeah, okay, good. I just didn't want to sound stupid if that was wrong.
Unless
So,
you're in Key West, then it's 6.
okay. So we had our fingers crossed that Scoop would be okay. So unfortunately, a few weeks or months go by, and he starts hobbling again. And the problem now is the fact that the cancer has spread to his paw, and so you can't remove a cat's paw because they'll try to walk in the nub, which is dangerous. So they had to remove his whole limb. My mom and I went into this really scared about what would happen as a result of having to remove his whole limb, because animals obviously depend on their limbs greatly, and he's already a little bit older, so we were concerned. But it was our only option was to get the limb removed, and we thought about it, we did it. And his limb was removed, and as soon as he came out of the surgery, he hopped around like nothing was wrong. And it was the most wonderful sight I've ever seen. And he lived for 5 more years. So can we give a round of applause for Scoop? Yeah. And then fast forward a few years later, and I was in Finland, and I was backpacking around Europe, and I was in Finland, down in some open-air market in Helsinki, Finland, and I was not vegetarian or vegan at the time. I'd always considered myself an animal lover, but I met this guy who was selling prepared reindeer meat, so reindeer meatballs, reindeer sausage, and I basically shared with him that I loved animals, and then he said, well, I shared with him that I loved animals, but then I also told him I want reindeer meat, and he said, well, I know you're kind of on a tight budget, so why don't you come back at 5 o'clock, and I'll give you whatever's left over. So I go and have a good day around Helsinki. I go back at 5 o'clock, And so he gives me all the reindeer meat he has left over, which is literally a garbage bag full of reindeer meat. So I throw it over my shoulder, and I get talking to the guy. He's kind of a cool guy, so we decide to go hang out at the library, ironically. And so we're on this way to the library, and he tells me how he's an activist. And I think, that's pretty cool. So I tell him, oh, I want to be an activist too. And he says, oh, what kind of activist do you want to be, John? And I said, oh, I want to be an animal activist. And he stops, looks at me dead in the eye, and he says, you have a sack full of reindeer meat on your shoulder. How does that make sense? And I had never thought about it that way. And so that got me thinking, what's the difference between deer in a park, or a cat you grow up with, and reindeer, or pigs, or cows, or fish, or chicken? There is no difference. And that is the thing that we have to remember, and the thing that we have to get out there as vegan activists to the world, is that there is no difference between the animals that we grow up caring about, or the animals we share our homes with, and the animals that are being raised in this horrible way, being treated so cruelly and inhumanely. So after I went vegetarian, I basically went vegetarian on principle, based on this conversation I had with the guy in Finland. And then I slowly weaned myself off of animal products over the course of 10 months, and then I watched this film called Earthlings. Anybody seen Earthlings? Okay, if you're already vegan, don't watch Earthlings. It's called The Vegan Maker, and it's called that for a good reason. It's got a lot of undercover footage of factory farming and really, really heartbreaking things as far as how we exploit animals. It was made in 2005, and actually, Joaquin Phoenix narrates it. And as you all know, Joaquin Phoenix gave an amazing speech last night at the Oscars, which I'm still buzzing about. Thomas and I watched it together, and we almost cried. It was absolutely moving, and it was such a great moment for the animals. So why do we focus on farm animals? Obviously we want to focus on all animals, but what is so great about focusing on especially the animals that we eat? Because of the numbers. 99% of the animals that are killed in the United States every year are farm animals. So that 1% sliver is all animals that are killed in laboratories, killed in wild, or hunted in the wild, that are killed in shelters. So while we should do everything we can to advocate for all animals, it's very important that we remember the numbers here and how each one of us can make such a drastic impact by focusing where the biggest areas of need are. And it would be one thing if farm animals lived good lives and then they had one bad day where they were sent to slaughter, but that's not the case. And it'd be one thing if farm animals were mindless, brainless beings, while cats and dogs had emotions and were sentient. But the fact of the matter is, farm animals are extremely intelligent and very capable of feeling emotions and pain and fear. And in fact, the story that I've heard an undercover investigator tell is that he worked at a facility similar to this, where the the mother pigs were kept in gestation crates so small they can't even turn around. And after a while, this pig learned how to open the crate with her tongue. So he witnesses this pig do this and enter into the common area. And what did this pig do? The pig, she did not run for the exit for her own safety. She went around to every other stall and opened it with her tongue. And yes, round of applause for that pig, exactly. And the fact that we can tell this story, because that's the power of social media and the power of storytelling, is that we can make people feel a certain way and make a really big impact. So when you're out there advocating for veganism, we obviously want everybody to be over here between Standard North American Diet and veganism. But as for getting people over there, we have to remember that it's a spectrum. And we want people, as many people as possible, to move along that spectrum as far as possible. And that is really important to remember when it comes to our communication and our asks. Because if we're asking everybody to go right over there, right now, it's not always going to work. So remember to understand your audience, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk more about social media and using your communication there. So I want everybody to do something for me. Close your eyes. So imagine yourself as a pig in a factory farm in middle of Iowa. You know nothing but concrete floors and dirt and filth and sadness, really. And then one day, after spending months and months and months in these conditions, not knowing why you're there or why your life is so miserable, somebody comes and opens the door. So open your eyes. And what do when they open the door and they open your crate and they push you onto an unremarkable truck and you hit the road. And it doesn't matter if it's February and it's freezing or August and it's sweltering. You are on the road for over 30 hours on your way to a slaughterhouse in Los Angeles. That is what pigs endure. A lifetime of misery and suffering only to wind up in a slaughterhouse on the other side of the country. So a couple of years ago, I lived in Los Angeles, and I teamed up with Los Angeles Animal Save, and I went outside a slaughterhouse called Farmer John in Los Angeles. And this slaughterhouse, we would basically gather around trucks as they came in with dozens and dozens of pigs. And it was so sad to see these. I filmed this pig staring at me blankly for 60 seconds. And moments after this was taken, this pig was killed. But when I got home, I posted this to Twitter. I posted this video to Twitter. And this video has been retweeted over 2,000 times, has gotten hundreds of comments, and has been seen almost 200,000 times. And so that's the power that we all have with social media, is the ability to take one animal's story and amplify it, exponentially increase your amount of good that you can do for animals. So it's not just important to sit down and order the vegan meal or to talk to one person about why they should go vegan or why they should protect animals, but to really exponentially increase your voice, because we all have that power by utilizing social media effectively. Now, you are all really part of a movement, basically a movement to give these animals a voice like they've never had before. Social media is essentially the new frontier for animal rights, and I think that a big reason why veganism and vegan food has been exploding so much in recent years, as well as great laws protecting animals, is because of the power that social media has. So I want to ask everybody, who here enjoys using social media? Now, who here doesn't enjoy social media? All right, now who here doesn't enjoy the fact that they like social media? That's me. Okay, yeah, I get it. Social media has a lot of good things, a lot of bad things. For all the bad, though, I think there's a lot more good in terms of the potential of spreading information. We have never been in a position to spread information across the globe like that to thousands or millions of people. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, in 2019, since I launched my own independent project, I have had 200 million impressions of my social media posts. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter posts have been seen 200 million times. And that is not the result of magic. I don't have a PhD in social media science, and I haven't paid to run ads. I'm just a regular guy who looked at what was working on social media and what wasn't, and just fine-tuned my approach. So it took a lot of time by focusing on what was working and what wasn't, but just over time, I came to a point where I realized how to use social media to really maximize the good that we can do for animals. Now, I'm not expecting anybody in this room to be like, I have to get 200 million impressions on social media or I'm going to be a failure. That is not the case. But if you can go from 1,000 to 10,000 or 10,000 to 100,000 by just making simple changes in how you're using social media, you're going to have a lot of success. Now, the thing that we have to remember is to communicate effectively, and that we all have an opportunity cost. So when we choose to do something, we're choosing not to do something else. But when we choose to say one thing, we're also choosing not to say something else. So our words really matter. We need to not just speak up for the animals, but to speak up for them effectively. Because all the animals care about are not our egos. All the animals care about are what's going to be effective in helping the most amount of them. So what can you do on social media? Maybe you're like, I think social media is pretty important, but what the heck do I do? So there's a variety of approaches that you can do and things that you can incorporate into how you're using social media. So you can share posts from others, from other organizations or individuals or groups that you like. These are some examples of posts that I've done before. This is a crab eating a cherry for about 5 seconds. So simple, but so many people reacted so positively to that because they've never seen a crab in that context. They've only seen them, being eaten. They've only seen them in weird contexts that are so far from the potential that these animals have. I make videos talking about advocacy, and then the last video is a hen that was rescued from a factory farm as she took her first moments in grass and sunlight. So you can share posts from others. You can engage in dialogue. So this is the Environment Secretary for the UK, and he was posting about promoting dairy, which I thought was super weird because, as we all know here, dairy is one of the worst things for the environment. So I replied to his tweet, and I was not rude. Maybe I was a little curt, but I was not rude. I did not cross a line. And then my tweet ended up getting more engagement than his tweet, so more likes and more retweets. And that's something that all of us should keep in mind, is that our voices really do matter, and social media is a great place to use our voices. Other things you can do, tell your origin story. Find a way to connect with your audience so they understand why you became the activist you are today, why you became vegan. Other things you can do, share the great plant-based food that you're eating or the great plant-based food that your dog is stealing. We all love food here. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that if you go vegan, you suddenly stop liking food and you just eat cardboard or you just eat salad all day. And we all know that that is not the case. You can use humor. So humor is a really great way of connecting with your audience. Humor, and the nice thing here is that by using different kinds of posts and using different approaches, you're reaching different members of your audience, members of people who've chosen to follow you. So some humor might work really well with some people, but then something maybe like undercover footage might work better with others. So this is, of course, the main thing that we need to focus on is exposing the cruel reality of what's going on behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses. And then what else can you do? Avoid the vegan bubble. So one of the big problems that vegans tend to put themselves into is that they get into this bubble where they only communicate with people who think like them. And if your whole social media feed is nothing but just content from people who think and act like you, that's cool, and maybe that makes social media a little bit more enjoyable, but that's not reality. You're taking your foot out of reality, and then you're not going to know how to influence others. So, vegans are, 1, 2, 3% of the population? If your whole social media newsfeed is just stuff from vegans, that's problematic because we aren't understanding how we can best influence people. Empower and inspire people, don't just depress them. Yes, it's important to share the kind of stuff that really needs to be seen, like that undercover footage from factory farming and telling sad stories that people can relate to. But don't just do that. Also empower people. Show people the potential that pigs have, that chickens have, that cows have. Post a blend of different kinds of content. So think about it like this. This could be sad posts, happy posts, funny posts, more informational posts. Don't just think about, don't just post sad stuff all the time. If your whole social media feed is doom and gloom, that's going to have people tune you out after a while. You're going to very quickly reach a point of diminishing returns if all you're posting is really, really sad stuff. So do talk about factory farming and sadness and how farm animals are these great emotional creatures who deserve our consideration and respect. Don't be afraid to come back to vegan food the next day to hit people in a different way. And then when in doubt, post about piglets. Piglets, basically nobody, whether you're a vegan or a meat eater, can look at a piglet warming themselves up by a fire and not have their heart explode. And then other things that you should consider is, this is I think the last graphic slide here. So basically when you're sharing posts on social media, ask people to share them on the platform that you're on. Ask them to take action on the platform that they're on. So if you're on Instagram, don't tell people to go to your Facebook post. If you're on Twitter, don't tell people to go to your website. Try and keep them on that platform, and they're more likely to actually take the action. So this is a video that asks people to share, retweet far and wide, and they did, and it's been seen over 7 million times. Okay, other things that you can do is to know your audience. So don't just think of your audience as one single type of person, because they're not. They're a very, very diverse bunch who respond to different kind of content differently. So sometimes I do say, go vegan. Sometimes I say, try meatless Mondays. Sometimes I say, reduce your meat consumption. In this case, I said, stop eating animals. So stop eating animals is a different way to tell the message. So you have to understand that if you ask for too much, you might get nothing. So understand how your audience might, appreciate it, and if they'll actually end up taking the action. Because if you're asking for too much, you might get nothing. Also, have outside interests. So show you're a three-dimensional person with outside interests. If you come off as only caring about animals, that's cool to everybody in this room, but that's not really cool to the majority of society who have outside interests. And so the problem with that is that people might think of you as a zealot, or the biggest problem with that is that you just aren't relatable. And as animal advocates, we need to be relatable. So we need to fly that vegan flag, but we need to do it in a way that makes us seem relatable so that other people can say, yeah, John, I like what he does. He's like a normal guy, but he also is vegan, or that he's interested in animals, but he's also interested in soccer. Or in this case, Misfits, who are my favorite band. So I went to see them a few years ago. Or other things, examples of how you can show that you don't just care about veganism. Post about how you're having a good time with a Jolly Green Giant, or how you're outraged that only 89% of people think this is the cutest dog of all time. Clearly, it's 100%. And then, of course, don't just speak effectively, or don't just speak for the animals. Speak effectively. Yes, always speak effectively. If I could boil this talk down to 4 words, it's don't be a jerk. It's that simple. Because as some of the few people who are actually making changes for animals and advocating veganism and trying to get other people to go vegan, we have kind of a weight on our shoulders. We have a lot of responsibility. And so it's important not to just scream from the mountaintops to go vegan, because as much as I would love to do that, that's not the most effective way of doing it. It's being more strategic. And the animals need us to be strategic and to be effective, not just to feel good about the work that we're doing. Our bottom line is animals, and that's where we need to put our focus. Simplicity is key. So this tweet is a video of a piglet and a dog playing. It's about 5 seconds long, and it's 7 words with an emoji. Super simple, but it worked really well. Over 1 million views for this tweet of mine. And I think the fact that this is so simple is the reason that the tweet was so successful. I have an 80-20 rule, so 80% of my posts are pretty short and sweet like this, and then about 20% I elaborate a bit more, maybe 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. But I think it's important to have really simple posts as the majority of things. Because again, as much as I would love to scream from the mountaintops all the reasons that people should go vegan, I understand that that's not always going to work when people have such a short attention span, especially on social media. You want to post moderately. So don't post so often that you are annoying people and that people are going to tune you out. Because if you're posting 5 times a day about animal abuse, it's going to be really quickly before people unfriend you or unfollow you. But so you want to post, you also don't want to post so little that people forget you exist, or that you're missing all kinds of opportunities to speak up for the animals. So really find that middle ground. For me, it's posting maybe 2 to 4 times on Facebook a month. With Twitter, I tweet once per day, and then Instagram once every couple days.
Wait, did you say a month? Yeah.
What's that?
2 to 4 times a month?
For Facebook, for me, that's what works for me though. It might not work for other people. I like to have fewer posts that are more successful rather than a bunch of posts that are just a little bit successful. I think it's really important to have a lot of engagement on your content so that people see more of your content more regularly. And then
is that replies also?
Replies to
Comments to your post?
No, that's separate. So
That's
I think
separate.
it's very important to always reply to comments. Now, I'll touch on that in a second. And at the end, Thomas and I will take questions, and we would love to answer them. So again, don't be accusatory, because when is the last time anybody saw somebody being a jerk and said, I want to be like that person? Basically never. That's not how it works. So it's really important that we are advocating for animals in a way that's bringing people in rather than pushing people out. One of my favorite quotes from Jack Norris is, we want a vegan world, not a vegan club. We need to make this a big tent movement that welcomes everybody, whether you disagree politically or not. If people, the thing is, everybody cares about animals, right? Polls consistently show that everybody believes in animal protection. And so we already have people on our side before they even go to make a decision about whether or not they want to go vegan. So we really have a great opportunity at our hands. And if we are taking that opportunity and plundering it by pointing our fingers in people's faces, that is going to not be effective, and it's going to turn a lot of people off. So I want to throw a few tips out here for your consideration that are very kind of nitty-gritty, which would be, this might be a good time to take a photo. So for one, don't automatically cross-post. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter allow people to basically post, if you post to Instagram, it posts to Facebook, or it posts to Twitter. And that's cool, but it's not a good thing. I mean, it's easy. That's the nice thing about it. That's why they make you do it. But it's not effective. Post late morning, early afternoon. That's when your posts are going to get the most amount of traction. Have a goal in mind. So if you normally get 20 to 25 likes per post, think about that when you're crafting a post. Think, is this post going to get at least 25 likes? And if it's not, change it so that it's going to. Craft the caption in a way it's going to. Crop the photo better. Choose the right kind of content. Short captions, concise captions are really important. Again, I told you about the 80-20 rule. Make posts emotional. So don't look at posts as an opportunity for you to just keep track of your life. It's not a place to just upload, be like, oh, I went on vacation to Key West. I need to upload all 40 photos. Choose those single best photo. Make it emotional. Make people connect with it. Use emojis. So emojis are a really great way of increasing your effectiveness. Data shows that 1 to 3 emojis actually increases the likelihood of people liking, commenting, and sharing. Don't overdo it with your emojis. Any more than 3, and it's like, I can't even see this, and I just turn away when I see that. So use social media and network with people in your field. So after this event, hopefully everybody here connects with everybody else on social media, because networking is super important in life in general, and social media provides a really great opportunity to do that. Reply to comments. So like you were asking earlier, is it important to reply to comments? Yes, it is. So I think having dialogue is really, really great on social media, because it's not just the person you're having a conversation with. There are so many people who are just like viewing, observing on social media, not actually being active on social media. So you think about, if you ask me a question and I answer it in the comments section, it's not just you seeing my response. It's everybody else who's seeing that, and there's a lot of people. So dialogue is actually a really great opportunity to advocate for animals. When you're sharing somebody else's post on Facebook, and you hit that share button, add your own caption in your own words. Put your Facebook friends into friend lists. Thomas touched on this. It's a really nice way to keep track of your friends. I have numerous friends lists Some of them are based on geography, so I have a Florida friends list. So when I was planning this tour, it's very easy to pull up everybody who I know in Florida, and I know Thomas did the same thing, which is very convenient. Invited waves, so when you are, Thomas already talked about this a lot. Basically, if you are creating events and you're inviting people, don't just invite everybody at once. Invite in 3, 4, 5 waves, starting with people who are most likely to attend, and that'll overall increase your turnout. Video content is best. Of all of my top performing posts, about 90 to 95% of them are videos. So video is really, really important.
Short or long?
Short. So yeah, unless it's YouTube. YouTube, the average length is 14 minutes. For every other platform, it's far, way below a minute. So the shorter the better, probably 10 to 30 seconds. Use third-party scheduling tools. So I use a platform called Buffer, which I think is really, really helpful. So this works for public Facebook pages, for business Instagram profiles. All you have to do is just change your personal to a business, and then any Twitter account. And it's so convenient because you can schedule and forget about it. Right now I have several weeks of posts scheduled on all of my platforms, so every day I don't have to wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to post? So it's very convenient. Hashtags are really good and useful for Instagram, not so much for Twitter or Facebook, kind of a waste of time there. Experiment with new features. So when social media platforms are offering new features, take advantage of them. You will be prioritized in news feeds because these social media platforms want you to use these news features, and also you will be better at them before everybody else, which puts you at an advantage. And we have to be better than other people because we are advocating for animals. We're some of the few people who are advocating for farm animals. And then, of course, don't click the like button on your own posts. We already know you like it, otherwise you wouldn't have posted it. So each platform offers different pros and cons. Facebook, the biggest pro is the potential of reach. There's 2.5 billion users on social media, which means there are so many eyes that we can get our posts in front of. The downside is the algorithm is such a killer. So if you're posting content that's not going to get engagement, so it's not going to get likes, and your audience doesn't care that much about it, it's just going to fall out of news feeds and be seen by hardly anybody. So you really have to make sure your content is really good. For Instagram, Instagram is probably your favorite social media platform. It's my favorite social media platform as far as enjoyment, but I don't think it's the most effective or the most impactful. And the reason I think that is because there is no share function. So if somebody's inspired by your posts, they can't share it. There's some weird back channel ways of doing it, but basically you really can't share posts. And so you're basically mostly speaking to people who already have chosen to follow you, which is good in its own way, which is why if you look at my Instagram, I speak to vegan advocates more than I do on my other platforms, because most of the people who are seeing my posts are people who have already chosen to opt in and see my stuff. And then Twitter is really great in some ways because you can tweet endlessly, basically 20, 30 times a day, and get away with it and not be tweeting too much. The downside is you're competing with so many other tweets. So many people are tweeting so often, so your content really has to stand out. And also Twitter is nice because that's where journalists are. So if you're trying to get media coverage, Twitter is a great place for that. For profile photos, I recommend using a professional looking shot for your for Twitter, something your friends and family appreciate for Facebook, and something you can be a little bit artsy or edgier for Instagram. Don't put all of your follow your heart eggs into one basket. The reason I say this is because if you're focusing all of your efforts building up your Twitter or building up your Instagram profile, and then in 2 years that platform falls out of favor with the general public, you've just wasted all that time building up that capital for nothing. So it's really important for you to kind of spread your time out across different platforms. And when's the last time anybody heard from MySpace, Tom? So don't be afraid to bow out of conversations. So if people are, if you're engaging in dialogue with someone, and let's say you post a picture of a pig on a factory farm, and somebody says, bacon, and you decide to have a dialogue with them in the comment section. And you think, you know what, my words are going to win them over. And they don't really get won over, and then they kind of want to go back and forth. Don't spend 3 hours talking to them. It's a waste of time, and and to wasting your valuable resources. We all have limited time and resources on this planet to advocate for animals, and there is a really big problem out there with factory farming and animal abuse across the world that needs our attention. So if we're spending all this time engaging in dialogue with one person only to have this person not even change, it's a waste of time. So don't be afraid to bow out of a conversation. So what I like to do is, if I am talking to someone and I don't feel like they're getting it, or I just feel like any more of my time is just going to be wasted, I'll say, I've said all that I'd like to say on this matter, you can have the last word below. And that's a really nice, convenient way of just kind of ending it, but also not coming off as a jerk. When Facebook friends of yours are posting too much content that's upsetting you, like there's animal abuse videos, like they're doing it like every day, don't unfriend them, unfollow them. And the reason being is because you're not burning that bridge. They can still see your posts, you can still message them, and you can always choose to follow them again later. And then, of course, they can still see your posts, which is great. And then, important thing to keep in mind here is unfollow refers to Facebook. On Instagram, the same feature is called mute. Unfollowing Instagram is actually like burning that bridge, so you don't want to do that. So I have lots of Facebook friends who post content I just don't want to see, and so I unfollow people all the time, and you shouldn't feel guilty. We're already vegan. We don't need to subject ourselves to more animal abuse all the time. Now, what you see on social media in terms of the impact that you're making is only the tip of the iceberg. So many people are going to be impacted by your work that you will never see. I'm fortunate in that I've received some messages that I've taken screenshots of when they've been sent my way, and I think, hey, I'll tell people about them later. So this is me telling you about some of the messages that I've gotten. The thing is, you can all do this too. Again, I'm just a regular guy who tried utilizing social media, and it's been working out pretty well, and this is something that everybody can do to be more effective on social media. So if you can take anything away from this talk, it's just that factory farming and animal abuse is not going to survive the era of social media. Social media has completely changed the game, and it's a really, really beautiful thing for animals. So I'm going to end on a quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will not forget how you made them feel. So as animal advocates, we have a responsibility to make people feel inspired to make a difference for animals. Thank you. So Thomas and I would love to take some questions. So what questions do you guys have for us?
Or if there's anything you would like to do, any ideas, we'd